glad to be here. This is my first online meeting, and I have to say it's real neat. And I don't know, I'll come back and I'll join y'all again. This is I don't know, it's an honor and a privilege anytime I'm ever asked to do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous. My sobriety date is April the 1st of 2008. And like I said before, I'm currently right now in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And I wasn't raised in Wisconsin, but I've been here for a few years, and I moved up here from Kentucky. That's where I got sober at. So super glad to be here with you all tonight. I tell you, it was a long road to get where I'm at right now, and I want to only have 15 or 20 minutes to kind of share with y'all how that happened. And a lot of new stuff's happened this year. I tell you, I've been telling my story for a long time, and never have I done it in 20 minutes. And to top it off, like since I've gone through the work again this year with a new sponsor, I've got a new story as a result of the 12 steps, as a result of redoubling my efforts through our suggestions. And it's sometimes I have a hard time finding the right words, articulating the grace that's been bestowed upon me. And so I would just want to tell you that I was like I said, I was raised in Kentucky, and my mother and father had divorced before I could ever remember them living together. And me and my sister lived with my mother, and they were my mother quickly divorced. I had a stepfather in my life, and living with them, my father knew what kind of house it was that I was raised in. And looking back on it, my mother were alcoholic, and my mother, he feared for mine and my sister's safety, and he would pick us up on the weekends, and he would say, "Seth, you're getting old enough now where I can hire a lawyer and get a court date set, and you could tell this judge you wanted to live with me. I wouldn't have to worry about you no more. If you would come and live with me, I would really appreciate that. Would you do that?" And I love my father, but I had to tell him no because I love my mother too. And so like I really hurt his feelings. And one time, it was December of 1998, he picked us up. He said, "Seth, I got something to tell you all. I've been to the doctor. They found out I got lung cancer, and I'm going to be sick for a little bit, but I'm going to get better." And I didn't think nothing else of it. And I spent that Christmas with him. And whenever it was a few weeks I had seen my father and my cousin come and picked us up, and I'm sitting on his couch waiting for my father to get home from a doctor's appointment, and in walked my grandmother and my stepmother and a gentleman that I don't recognize, and it's my father. He had taken cancer really bad, and he took chemo really bad, and the cancer spread really quick, and he looked like he was 90. And I was able to get up and give him a hug, and then I took it off. I ran down into the basement, and I got on my knees, and I folded my hands, and I prayed for God not to let my father die. And whenever he passed, I can't remember saying an honest prayer from that day until alcohol beat me into a state of submission, almost a decade later. So I tell you, whenever I would grace the presence of rooms of AA, in the meantime there, whenever y'all was talking about a God, and that the solution was finding the power, I didn't want anything. I didn't want to know. I wasn't ready to hear that until there was nothing left to do, until the first step become real in my life, which really at the end of it looked like that I knew that the drinking was going to continue no matter how great the necessity or the wish to stop. It wasn't until I swallowed that truth that anything spiritual looked good to me. And I tell you, I'm just going to fast track this, that my mother, I think it's important to mention, is that she got a divorce from that abusive stepfather, and met another guy that everybody seemed to really like. But some things happened between me and him that put my mother in a position to choose him or me, and my mother chose him. And after all the litigation and all the dust settled, I was awarded custody to my father's mother, my grandmother, who raised me. I was 13 when that happened. And I didn't speak to my mother for 9 years, and I hated her. And so I tell you, living with my grandmother, I was done in a lot of trouble when she got me, and which led to me living in detention centers and group homes and boot camps and treatment centers. Any freedom I ever had was short-lived. And I can remember early on in those days that I told myself that if when I get out of here, if I could just put together about 6 months of good behavior, I could walk this probation out. I could be a regular kid, and I could go to football games, and I could do what I wanted to do, and I would make my mind up to be good when I got out. And I would mean that, and I would get out and I would drink, and I would be right back in. Those that sort of fairy tale thinking that I had left me pretty early on, because fast track, I'm 20 years old, and I had just got out of jail doing 9 months for some co-checks, and I'm sitting on the edge of my bed wondering why I'm even leaving, because I know I'm coming right back. I had given up on the idea that my life could be any different by this time. You know, any freedom that I ever had was short-lived, and in the moments of brief freedom that I lived with my grandmother, who got the blunt of my selfishness. This lady, I tell you, it got to the point where she was having to hide her purse in her own home, and she thought that maybe she couldn't remember how much money she had in her purse, and maybe I would hit a lick somewhere else. I would have a few extra dollars in my pocket. I would put money into her pocketbook to throw her count off, and I can remember I was walking down the hallway one day, and she had her money. She had her billfold out on her bed, and she was counting her money, and she's sobbing. And I said, "What's the matter, Graham?" And she said, "Seth, I'm going crazy. I can't even count my own money." And I had her right where I wanted her, second guessing herself where I would take all of it. And she would tell me, she has told me that she would see me nodded out on the couch, and she would put her finger underneath my nose to make sure I was still breathing, because she'd think I was dead. And apart from you all, apart from the power that I found through the 12 steps, that's who I am. That's who I treat the person I love the most in this whole world. And thank God for a program of action that's written down in this book that showed me a way to make amends for all that. I tell you, I sit here today a free man from all that, free from the guilt and embarrassment and the shame of everything I've ever done. And I'd say I ended up going to treatment because I was running from the law, not because I wanted to get better. I had committed a burglary, and I was running from the police. On March the 30th, I committed that burglary, and on April the 1st, 2 deputies questioned me about it, and I took it off, and I ran to a homeless shelter about 45 minutes north of me to Lexington, Kentucky, where I could hide out. And I took my last shot of alcohol in that detox bathroom on April the 1st of 2008. Resigned to the idea that my life would be cut short due to what I was doing. And I welcomed the idea. I knew that I would never be able to stop and be a productive member of society. And like I said, the jumping off place. And you know, something happened to me. I stayed my 5 days in detox, which I had been there a couple of times before whenever I just couldn't do it anymore. And, you know, this time when I got there, I laid my mat on the floor with the homeless people, and I didn't even put my sheet on my mat. I just curled up. And 9 days into that deal, I saw a guy drop dead of a heart attack, and he was in the treatment program. And I had never talked to him, but I seen him in classes. And he was 27 years old, and he fell dead of a heart attack. He was 22 days sober, and he had bad blood pressure and did take care of himself. And when I seen him on the stretcher with his face blue and his lips were purple, there was a voice that come that I had never really listened to and asked me if that's what I really wanted. I lived with the thoughts of suicide for years, thinking that my family would be better off without me. The day before that, I'm standing at a busy intersection in Lexington, Kentucky, trying to talk myself into walking in front of a lecturing bus, because I cannot see life with or without alcohol. And I tell you what I did. I answered that question is no, I didn't want to die anymore. So I did something different. I started to participate in my own recovery. And whenever I was at an AA meeting and I had a lump in my throat like I wanted to share, I was speaking up and I was asking for help. And just for time's sake, I'm going to fast forward that. I ended up turning myself in for the burglary about 90 days into that stint and treatment. I called home, was checking with my family, and found I had been indicted. There was a warrant for my arrest, and the treatment center kicked me out. They said, Seth, you can't stay another night here. We want harbor fugitive. And I left treatment that day and went and turned myself in. Early recovery, a lot of people have that. You know what? Just my experience, that early recovery was real exciting for me. For me to be living with no hope for so long, and for me to think that something could be different for me, I grabbed a hold of it like I was drowning, and this is my life jacket, and I still not let go. Something really important that happened at treatment center is, you know what, to save my life. A guy got up at a podium telling a story like I'm doing right now when I was 30 days sober, and he saved my life. This guy was the first person that ever, I knew plenty of guys that drink like I drink. I never knew one guy that drank like I drink was able to quit. And he won my confidence. And I ran up to him after the meeting and I said, man, how did you stop drinking? I didn't catch that idea. I was so caught up on the similarities, I didn't hear any solution. And he said, Seth, he said, I finally worked all 12 steps. He said, I finally started to pray. And on that night, when I was 30 days sober, I got on my knees, that homeless shelter I was living in. And I said, God, if you're real, I need your help. And I started to do that consistently. And I sit here today with a sort of faith that I know that, you know what, that has seemed to really serve me well. Ended up getting a sponsor when I got out of there. And, you know, I've not really looked back. Like my whole recovery program, is the backbone of that is knowing in my heart there's people suffering like I've suffered that don't know a way out. I spend a lot of my free time, most of my free time, with the attitude these people could recover if they only knew what we have to offer. And that's why I attend regular meetings and I have a home group, and I try to make myself available to new men. And I continue to work steps. Like I said, I have been a victim. Maybe that's not the right words. I have, you know what? I have been the guy that's been in AA meetings, only was able to give lip service to some of the harder suggestions in our book. And it has kept me, it's been a black cloud over my head a lot. And I'm talking specifically about the amends process with my mother. And that's what I really want to get to right now. I'll tell you, because I've just got some relief from that of here recently, that I tell you, I've stood behind podiums and rooms of AA you know what, anytime I'm asked to, and I've had this clear message that you can recover holding on to resentment, because I had no solution. I tell you, my mother and what and what happened, I believed in my heart that I would never get over that. And what happened at 3 years sober, I was having trouble with personal relationships. And really what happened, there wasn't one person in my life at 3 years sober that could not easily leave. And I tell you, I was sick of it. And my sponsor at the time said, you need to go make amends to your mother. And I said, you know what, I'm willing. And I did. And I sat down with her, and my sponsor come with me. And I got a chance to share with her that fourth column that I did with that inventory. And the truth is, when I was looking for my part in that, I didn't believe any of it. And I told her, and I shared this stuff with her. Looking back on the day, I was looking for an apology from her. And in our book, it talks about in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. When we go to these people and we admit our thoughts, that years of that they become all too ready to admit theirs, and years of controversy we wiped away in a matter of hours. And I tell you, I went there at 3 years sober, and I was unprepared for her to hear that and look at me and say, Seth, I forgive you. And to have her, not in these words, but exactly what I heard was, Seth, I'm so glad you come around and you figured out that you was the problem. And I tell you, I left there pretty hurt. She wanted me to do some things. She wanted me to call her once a week, and she wanted me to love her, and she wanted me to come by for Thanksgiving. And I told her I would do all that. And I left there, and I didn't do half what I said I would do. And I got back out into my car. My sponsor was with me, and he looked at me and said, Seth, he said, there's no place I'd rather be. He said, I know that didn't go how you wanted to go, but I want to let you know there's no place in the whole world and I'd rather be than with you in that living room once you become a man. And he told me that he loved me. And there's a lot of people that told me they loved me for a long time, but I don't know, for some reason, for this guy to have heard my inventory, to know everything about me, to know how hard that was for me, and have the intuition to know that I didn't go the way that I wanted it to, and for him to tell me he loved me, I was able for the first time outside of my grandma to let that man love me. And through that relationship, I have scores of men and women and Alcoholics Anonymous that I would do anything for. And, but I was still, and I was able to show up with a pie in my hand and a gift in my hand for Thanksgiving and Christmas at my mother's place. But I tell you, I was never able to be in her presence and able to exhale. And I still just bristle with the idea of her getting away with what had happened to me until, until it was March of this year. And I was beating myself pretty bad about, the way things have turned out between me and her. And I redoubled my efforts. And what I did was I got a new sponsor. And there's a line in our book that I tell you I've read 100 times that I was never able to interpret it this way. With the help of the new directions, and plus with this attitude of living with this for so long, I was willing. And what my sponsor told me was that, Seth, we don't look for our part when we do our fourth step, when we do our fourth column. It's not the directions. That's not what it says. And the line I'm talking about is this: putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done to us. We resolutely look for our own mistakes. Where have we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? And so what I did this time was I had the first three columns was the same, but this time I asked God to help remove that off of my head, for me to look at my mother like she's innocent and that she's white as snow as a child of God. And I did that with all the sincerity I could muster. And what I found out in that fourth column, looking for my mistakes, is that what was so clear to me is that my mother's alcoholic. And the only member of AA that she knows is me. And my mother's never been 12-step. Knowing just those things and some specific stuff that I've really acted selfishly throughout the years, but just knowing that she has what I've had and I enjoyed the opportunities I had, I was really able to know that there was some things that needed to be made right. And I went down there about 4 months ago, and I did my best to let her know that I'm sorry for how I've acted. And I left there thinking that I was going to have some spiritual appeasement. But to tell you the truth, I left there on the drive back, I didn't feel any different. And I was wondering if the amends was even done yet. But I got tired and I got a hotel. When I woke up the next day and was driving, the thought come to me early on that was sincere. And I told myself, man, I hope that she feels better. Hope that when she woke up today, she knew that she had a son that cared enough about her to come down here and do that for her. And then I knew that the men's was done, and I finally understood what people have been telling me in AA for years, that the men process isn't about me, it's about them. And I thought that was important. I just got about 2 minutes. I don't know. I'll tell you, my grandmother died about a month before I made the amends to my mother. And I tell you, again, through the amends process, there was like all this family that was coming in and out of my grandmother's house. And I'd say I didn't have to look down at the floor one time. I wasn't ashamed or embarrassed of anything I'd ever done. I had paid them all back their money. And I'd tell you, at the end, they was looking to me for strength and guidance. And they asked me what I thought about things. And I'd say I was, all through that time, my grandmother was sick with Alzheimer's. I was finally able to show up for my family when they needed me the most. I'd tell you, there was, if I never get nothing else, if AA doesn't produce one more good thing in my life, and I know that my grandmother died knowing that I was going to be okay, I will forever be showing up, sponsoring guys, and doing my best to be a good AA to pay that back, to make sure that y'all can become the people you want to become. And I promise I'm not going to go long. I'm just going to end it there and thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank y'all.